Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hi. I hope you had a good breakfast, right? Yeah? Okay. I couldn't eat. I was too nervous. Maybe afterwards. All right. So first AI talk of the day, or so Mika's talk was also about AI. This one is about my MCP server for Robot Framework. A quick statement before we start about that, connecting also to Mika. I enjoy writing Robot Framework code. I'm not writing that much nowadays, but when I did, I really enjoyed writing it, and I was also proud of the solutions that I created. However, some things were sometimes annoying to do and tedious to do, like finding locators on a web page, trying out keywords, maybe with wrong arguments. And this is where the Robot Framework MCP server should help you. So it can accelerate your productivity, but it should not replace you learning Robot Framework or interacting with the community. So use it, but use it with care. Quickly about me, Mani Kasiriha. I'm from Düsseldorf, Germany. I work as a QA engineer at DSV. This is a global freight forwarder. And I'm a board member of the Robot Framework Foundation since 2022. I have a small family, wife and a daughter, maybe soon a dog, hopefully, let's see. Play the guitar when I have the time, play on my Steam Deck, watch some movies and stuff, like a couch potato. You can find my contact information there below. And the name is unique, it's a Persian name, you won't find many with that name, so you will find me if you just Google it. All right, so let's get started. It seems last year was like the year or the age of MCP servers and coding agents. I've been following along on social media, and it felt like every day there was a new coding agent coming out or an MCP server coming out. Yeah? Now we have Cloud Code, GitHub Copilot, Goose, Codex, OpenCode, and a lot more. And also we have a lot of MCP servers like the Playwright, GitHub, Chrome DevTools, Selenium MCP, a lot of tools out there. Now I'm seeing that, and I was wondering, well, what about Robot Framework? How can we really benefit from that? Because the purpose of those agents and tools are that I can describe my things in natural language, like development tasks, and the agents and the MCP servers will handle that. So can I describe my scenario nowadays like this to a coding agent? Hey, create a Robot Framework test case. It should open this URL, do some shopping, because this is a demo shopping site from Source Labs, check if the items were added, and do a checkout. And can I get out something like that? Like a nice Robot Framework test suite with some nice keywords that actually works and that is free of hallucination. Who of you have tried that with LLMs or agents? Can you raise your hand, a few? Oh, okay. How was your experience? Was it more like this or mixed? Some say yes, some say, okay. Great, thank you. I had the same impression, so mixed impression. So when you ask an LLM, the results were not that good. With agents, they were a bit better, but all in all, I tried a lot, and all those things gave me something which looked like a working and nice Robot Framework test suite, but in the end, it wasn't. Or it took a very, very long time until they got it right with coding agents. So I realized there are some gaps in the AI support of Robot Framework. So often the recommended libraries were wrong. Yeah? So often because Selenium was so popular, this one was recommended for web testing, which is good, but maybe nowadays other libraries are out there. Then it was often a mixture of hallucinated keywords, maybe combined from different libraries that don't match together. Yeah? Or maybe the arguments were used incorrectly. Maybe it did a new browser with the argument Chrome for browser library, which didn't work. And what was the worst thing, there was no feedback from the application under test. So when I created some test that opens a web page, there was no feedback like, hey, this is a DOM tree, this is what's going on in my web page. So it was very hard for the agent to write a matching test case. Then there was a lack of knowledge about my user keywords and the libraries. And when using coding agents, it seemed more like a trial and error to get the robot framework test suite right. So it changed something, executed the full thing, didn't work, changed again. So it took a very long time. And that's when I figured out maybe we need a robot framework MCP server. So that's what I then started creating, like the middle or end of last year. I found some MCP server pilots out there, so I was not the first one, but they were mostly prototypes, and I wanted to take like a different direction. I have to say that MCP servers are not the only solution nowadays to extend your coding agent with robot framework knowledge. So I've heard that the guys from NICE project did a great workshop about creating a RAG system with robot framework knowledge. So that's definitely also a great approach. And the new topic is nowadays agent skills. So this will also allow you to extend your coding agent with some knowledge for specific tasks. I don't want to go into detail, but those are alternatives you can also consider instead of an MCP. But anyway, I wanted to go with an MCP. Who knows what an MCP server is? Can you give me a quick sign? Okay, well, maybe a quarter of the room. Okay. Then let's quickly recap. Thank you. So MCP server is a way to connect tools to our agents, because this is what makes an agent. It's not there by itself. It can interact with the outer world. Yeah? And with a tool, you can do stuff like automate a browser or do something with GitHub. Yeah? So the tools are what makes them agent. And MCP servers are considered the USB standard of tools. So it's very easy to develop an MCP server, add some tools to it, and then connect this MCP server to any agent that supports MCPs. And basically all of the coding agents nowadays support MCP servers. And the nice thing is you can connect one MCP server like Playwright, but you can also connect multiple ones like Playwright and GitHub. And then when you give a task to the agent, it can freely choose which MCP server and which tools to use to fulfill that task. Yeah? So it makes it very, very flexible. So that's just quickly a summary about MCP servers. So, but how to get started creating an MCP server? I looked at a very popular one also for automation, which is the Playwright MCP, and looked at the tools that it offers. In total, it offered 28 different tools. And the tools were named like Navigate, Click, Select, Hover. So they were all very much focused on web automation because Playwright is about web automation. And first I thought, okay, does this approach make sense for Robot Framework MCP? But then I realized no. Robot Framework is more generic. It's not focused on web automation. It can also automate REST APIs. It can access databases or steer mobile devices or desktops. We need something more generic. So I came up with a different approach here and thought, okay, what should the MCP server offer? So first, I want to give it a full scenario as a test case, and it should be able to understand that scenario and the technology behind. So there's a tool called Analyze Scenario, which will do exactly that. It will read a scenario and then decide, is this a web scenario? Is this an API scenario? Is this a database scenario? So that's what the Analyze Scenario is for. And based on that, it can recommend libraries. So for a web scenario, maybe Browser Library or Selenium Library is a good choice. Yeah? So those tools will figure out what is the scenario about and what will be the recommendation. Then our agent needs to know the keywords, the library keywords and the user keywords in our environment. So I added two tools to find keywords by name or by semantic search and get some keyword info about it. So we all know and love the keyword documentation, and this is exactly what the agent can get with that approach. It can know then the arguments, it will read the examples of the keyword documentation, and so on. Then an important thing is the ability to execute things stepwise. Because I want to be able to execute single robot framework keywords, and if they are successful, that's good. If there's a failure, no problem, the agent can just repeat and then trying to execute things again. So we have a keyword execute, a tool called execute step, which is to execute single keywords. We have a tool, execute flow, which can execute complex control structures like for loops, while loops, and if else, and so on. And we have a tool called get session state. And with that tool, you can get everything inside your current testing session, like what are the imported libraries, what are the variables, and what is the DOM tree, for example, or what was the latest status from your API response. So this is like an insight to your application under test. And at the end, you want to create a runnable test suite out of those executed keywords. So there are also tools to build a test suite, and it will take the successful steps and create a test suite out of it. And if you want, you can then also run the test suite and get the results. Yeah? So the agent has like all the tools it needs to create and run a test suite. And the last thing I also added, so the agent will always make mistakes along the way. It might use a wrong argument, it might use a wrong syntax, and sometimes the error messages from Robot Framework are good and from the libraries, but sometimes they lack a bit of guidance. So it's always nice if the agent gets a bit of guidance of what to do else. So when I'm running the open browser keyword on the browser library, I'm giving back some error message and saying, maybe you should use new browser and new page instead, because this is much nicer for web automation. Yeah? So this is how I give back some guidance to the agent. So in total, those are the tools offered by the MCP. It's in total 15. There are 5 more for debugging purposes and for other things not so relevant, but at its core, so those are the most important tools that I offer. And I have to say, compared to Playwright with 28, I think this is a pretty low number, yeah, which is good because agents are confused if you offer too many tools. Yeah? So it's important to keep that number a bit low. So much for the theory. So what are the use cases for this Robot Framework MCP? So how can you use it? How is it useful for you? One thing is what I showed in the beginning, single prompt automation. So you give like one text scenario to your coding agent, describes a scenario that should be automated, and then you just let your coding agent run together with the Robot Framework MCP. I have recorded a small video. I have to say it's a bit played quicker than it was recorded, yeah, so don't be confused. I just didn't want to spend too much time. So the video will just do exactly that. It will operate a scenario on a web page I created, so you can see what happens. So this is a scenario we are running. I'm using a personal shopping page of mine because this is a very complex shopping page. The Source Labs demo, a lot of agents just can do. So this is a more complex shopping page. And so let's have a look. On the right-hand side, you can see the GitHub Copilot window. So this is where I enter the scenario. And now it's starting to analyze. And now it's going to execute the single steps. So it will now open the browser. It will try to add items to the cart, which it did. And now what you can see, you see this running icon and the execute step. This is red. It's also doing mistakes along the way. And what it will then do, it will get the session state, it will read the web page, will again do some mistakes because I did something nasty in the cart, but it will recover. Yeah? It will retry until it succeeds, yeah? Until it verifies the items in the cart, and now it will do the checkout process. Yeah? So it will proceed until the order is completed. So this is a final screen, checkout done. And at the end, it will build the final test suite and give me some feedback. So this is a Robot Framework test suite. I can just click the play button, and this one is actually working. Yeah. So this was now very, very quick. If you want to have a real demo, just meet me in the speaker's corner later. We can also do some example stuff there. But this is like one example flow how you can use it. Just in slow motion. So I gave it a one-shot scenario. It called the analyze scenario and the recommend libraries. It will give me back a new session. So this is like a test suite in a way that it gives me back. It says this is a web session and libraries recommended browser or Selenium. I could give in the prompt a specific preference. I could say use Selenium, then it will use Selenium, but I didn't say anything, so by default it will use browser. So it will then import resources and libraries if needed with the manage session keyword. And then it will execute n times execute step, yeah, like new browser, fill text, click, yeah. And then after a while, it will get the session state. If there's a new page opening, it will get like the DOM tree of the page. And then finally, it will build the test suite. So this is a typical flow for this one-shot automation. However, there are different use cases. You can also use it as a kind of a testing buddy and do things stepwise, like, hey, please, MCP, open this web page, log in. And the MCP does that and leaves the session and the browser open. And then you can say, hey, please add the t-shirt to the shopping cart. And the MCP will do that. It will click on the t-shirt link. You can also say, hey, please list all CSS selectors for all products. And it will call the get page source, and it will give you back the selectors. Yeah? So you can also use it as a testing support, as a buddy who is inside your context and help you with testing. Another thing, who of you has opened the Chrome DevTools? I thought so. Who of you knows that there's a recorder in the Chrome DevTools? Also a few, okay. I was surprised. I only figured out like 1 or 2 months ago there's a recorder. And I realized, okay, I can just record my steps in the application, in my website, and then I can just output my recording as a JSON or as a Puppeteer script. And guess what? I can use the Robot MCP. I can just put in this script and say, please execute the steps from that script. And this also works, yeah? Different approach of automation. You can also use it for refactoring. The thing is, the initial test suite that you get out of the RFMCP, they are ugly because it's like low-level keyword automation. You have all the low-level keywords. And of course, this does not look very nice. However, you can say, hey, Robot MCP, please refactor this test to use a clean keyword-driven approach, use reusable keywords for this and that, and variables for the credentials and locators to have some kind of page object pattern. And then your agent will refactor the site, but use the test, but Robot MCP will again execute this stepwise and fix any errors along the way. So this is a nice way of refactoring stuff. You can also use it to convert between libraries. So you can say, hey, Robot MCP, please take this browser library use case and convert it to Selenium. Yeah? So, and again, execute it stepwise. Yeah? So this also works in examples that I did. So a lot of possible use cases. Also a bit of weird use cases. We all know this topic of self-healing. I even created a library that I presented last year that nobody uses, but there's also different approaches to self-healing. So Copilot and Claude Code also offer CLI clients. So it's not all about this agent chat window that I showed. You can also use it on the command line. And those tools also allow to use MCP servers. So I could just do a one prompt on the command line. I could even run this on my CI, as I understood. And you can say, hey, after test execution, please check my results in the output XML, rerun all failed tests stepwise using Robot MCP, and fix them if the root cause is a locator failure. This works with Claude Code or with Copilot. Of course, you need to be a bit brave to do that. Yeah? I'm just giving you some ideas. Yeah? I'm not saying this is something you should do, but it's a possibility. Okay, what else? I also have a front end in the MCP that you can start as an option. So if you want to see what's currently going on in the MCP server, you can open this front end as a web page, and then you can see what libraries are you currently using in your session. And you get also a preview of your test suite right now in the memory of the MCP server. So you don't have to wait until the final test suite is being built. You can just look in this web page and then copy stuff from there if you want. Okay, this already brings me to the end. I was a bit too quick, but anyway. So you can find more info on my Robot Framework repository here. You can install this RFMCP server with pip. I have different packages for the RFMCP. There's a slim package, then it's just RFMCP. This comes without any additional dependencies. If you install the RFMCP all package, it will come with dependencies for browser library, for Selenium, for Appium, and for requests and database library. So you can choose yourself how you want to install it. But all in all, it will allow you to write robot framework tests in your natural language. It will work with a lot of AI agents that support MCP servers, and it supports a lot of different libraries. So you can use browser library with it, Selenium, Appium, requests, all the standard libraries, database library as well. And I also tested with other libraries not officially supported that I listed here, like the REST instance or my own doc test library for document comparison. So this also works quite well with other external libraries out of the box. You just need to give it a try. There's also a plugin system that I developed, which makes it a bit easier to customize your library for the MCP, but I don't cover it here. And the last thing is, there's also a so-called debug bridge in there, which will allow you to use the MCP server as a library, and you can add a keyword in the middle of your test suite, maybe after a login, and then the execution will stop at this keyword, and you will have the context of the test session available in your agent. So that means you can run a few steps from your test, stop the execution at that moment, and then you are inside the test and can chat with the context. Yeah, so you can then say, again, give me all the CSS selectors and stuff. You will find demos about that on my repo, also videos, so just check it out. All right, I think that's already it from my end. Thanks a lot. I hope to have a few questions to spare the free time here. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mani. If you have questions, raise your hand. Before we go there, the moment you got it working for the first time, what feelings did you go through?
Yeah, I was quite proud of myself. It was the first MCP server I created, so a good feeling. But when I created it, the idea was this is just a prototype, and someone else who knows stuff maybe should take this and create something good out of it. Yeah, but then it became more. It was working, so then I released it. Yeah.
Any existential crisis, like or scared feelings or anything like that? Because this is like changing the things we do.
Yeah. I wasn't scared. I mean, I think people can use this one if they see it useful. If not, then it's just another tool out there. But one thing I realized, it's very, very annoying to test an MCP server. Yeah? So maybe someone needs to create a robot framework library for MCP server testing. Yeah? Maybe next year we have something.
That's actually a really good point, and also evaluating like LLMs, like how they operate. All right, first question there.
First, thank you for your presentation and your work. The scenario you presented is quite interesting, but I was thinking, could it be that, I mean, the AI will try to fix the problem and to find a route to create that test, but is it possible that it's going to see a bug and try to work his way around the bug and write a test, I mean, finding his way around the bug? So what would be a way to fix that kind of issues in your model?
So you mean if there's a bug and you say the LLM will...
Because you said he's going to try to find a route to achieve what you asked him to do. So what if there's a bug and he's going to start to build a test which includes the bug?
Okay, so if there's a bug and I say, okay, please build the test according to the current state. So I have to say it's not really made for that. I think the idea is to speed you up writing your automated test. And of course, you should check what's being generated. Yeah. So the idea is that you create it on an application where you know how it works. So it's not made for this kind of exploratory testing, like, hey, go to the application and find bugs. Yeah. So this is maybe something that needs to be added. But maybe if you give it enough context, like maybe some documentation about your application, how it's supposed to behave, or how the UI is supposed to look like, yeah, then maybe this would help to to avoid that problem, that it will mask those bugs. Yeah? But just out of the box, it will behave exactly like you do. It will just take what is there and then automate what is there. But let's have a chat. Maybe we find a good solution to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Did we have a question there? Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, Manny, for the great talk. And I'm pretty sure this one is going to be used more often than the self-healing library.
Yeah.
My question is about the integration. In the demo video, you showed a prompt stating #robot MCP. But I've been playing around with the Playwright MCP, and that was implemented in a way that you can choose a specific agent being the Playwright agent. Would it be possible to implement this in the same way, that you can choose the Robot MCP as an agent?
So the Robot MCP itself as an agent, no, but it should be possible to just create like a sub-agent in Copilot. I think Copilot also supports sub-agent for specific tasks. And you could say, hey, this is a robot framework agent. It shall use the Robot MCP server, and maybe be more precise. Hey, please use those specific tools. Make sure to always get the DOM tree before just guessing locators. I think such an approach could work. But this is just an MCP server. It's not an agent itself. But it should definitely be possible to create a sub-agent out of it. Or go into the direction of agent skills that I described briefly. You could create an agent skill for web testing that describes how to use this Robot MCP properly. Yeah? I think there are a lot of ways to customize. I would also love to discuss maybe later to find a good way and also hear more about the Playwright agent. This is something I have not looked into that much.
Okay, thank you. And could it be used for API testing too?
Yeah. So didn't show in the examples, but you can basically give it an open API specification and say, hey, this is my specification. This describes the web service. Please create all of the important scenarios. And then it will also use the request library by default. It can also use REST instance. Then this also works. Maybe it does a few errors along the way, which will hopefully recover. But yeah, it also does API testing. Yeah.
Great. Looking forward to use it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's take one more question from there.
Is it working? Yeah. Nice job. I like your approach you choose. I have a question that I used something similar before, and I had a problem, maybe you encountered it as well, that when I use some prompt or write a story to an AI agent to generate me test cases, and in some way I didn't like what was generated. And I told the agent to fix some part, and the agent always, like 100% time, changed even the things I liked. So I'm not sure if you encountered it and how you fix it.
Yeah, so I did encounter exactly this when developing other things, so not for test automation, but for general development. A pattern that I typically use is that I first do some research about the topic I want to do, then I let the agent do a plan about that. So I tell the agent, please make a plan to automate this scenario. Don't implement it yet, create a plan, and let me review the plan. And then I take a look at the plan and see, okay, what libraries does it plan to use and so on. And then if I'm happy with it, then I say implement. And with this pattern, I was able to solve a lot of those problems. And this plan is then used to keep the agent on track so that it doesn't do something weird along the way. I'm not sure if that helps you, but this is something that helped me a lot. Yeah?
Question just out of curiosity, which LLM? Yeah. Which is your favorite LLM?
For development,
Any.
It's the Opus 4.6. But
that's
okay.
there's the
But
issue.
you don't have to use it for the MCP. It also works with smaller models. Yeah, no worries.
You can use it, but it's...
Codex works also very good.
Yeah.
Let's take one more question, and then we're done there.
Yeah, hi, Manny. Thank you for the presentation. So I have a question. Like, I see that with MCP it's pretty useful to start new project, try some POC, but when dealing with complex testing systems that have been built over the years, do you have any tips on how to make the productivities increase in that kind of scenario?
Maybe it helps. So what I've seen, it helps the agent a lot if you describe more context about your project. And this can, for example, be done in the agent's markdown file that you can add to your project. So this is where you could describe, hey, my resource files are in this folder, yeah. So this is how my tests are structured. This is how my environment is managed. So I'm using UV or Poetry. This is stuff you could describe in the agent's markdown file of your project. And then the agent will follow those standards. And hopefully it will also help the agent to understand your project structure. This is something which has worked for me. Maybe it works for you as well. So this is just the only hint I can give.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mani. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
We'll continue the discussions.